I never thought I'd come back to Millbrook, not after everything, not after 12 years of carefully building a life in Chicago that had nothing to do with this place. But when my mom forwarded me the invitation to the town's 100th anniversary celebration, something stirred in my chest. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was the fact that I'd just signed divorce papers 3 months earlier and was looking for any excuse to feel something other than numb. Or maybe, if I'm being honest with myself, it was because I knew he might be there. The drive from Chicago took 6 hours, and with every mile marker I passed, I felt like I was rewinding through my own history. The cornfields gave way to familiar rolling hills, the highway exit that still had the same faded billboard for Johnson's feed store. Main Street, which somehow looked exactly the same and completely different all at once, they'd repaved it. Added those old-timey street lamps that every small town seems to think makes them charming. But Murphy's Hardware was still there. So was the diner where we used to get milkshakes after football practice. I pulled up to my parents' house just as the sun was setting, painting everything in shades of amber and rose. My dad was on the porch before I even got out of the car, and the hug he gave me felt like coming up for air after being underwater too long. Mom had made pot roast. We sat around the same kitchen table where I'd done homework and had awkward conversations about college applications and pretended everything was normal when nothing felt normal at all. They asked about Rachel, and I gave them the sanitized version. We grew apart, wanted different things, all the polite phrases people use when they don't want to say that she'd looked at me one morning and asked why I never seemed fully present, why there was always this distance between us no matter how close we got. I didn't tell them that I'd had no answer for her, that I'd stared at the coffee maker and realized she was right. The festival was set up in Memorial Park, and when I arrived Saturday morning, it was like the entire town had been transported back in time. There were vintage cars on display, women in period dresses, a whole historical reenactment area where people were demonstrating what life was like in the 1920s. The air smelled like kettle corn and grilled meat, and a bluegrass band was setting up on the main stage. I bought a lemonade and wandered through the crowds, recognizing faces that had aged the same 12 years I had, trying to place names to people who looked vaguely familiar. That's when I saw him. He was standing near the Historical Society's booth, looking at old photographs they'd mounted on poster boards. He wore a blue chambray shirt with the sleeves rolled up, jeans that fit him better than anything had a right to, and his hair was shorter than I remembered, but still had that slight wave that used to fall across his forehead. My heart did this stupid thing where it forgot how to beat properly for a second. Ethan Mitchell, the name I'd trained myself not to think about, the person who'd understood me in ways I hadn't understood myself. My best friend through 4 years of high school until everything got complicated, and I'd run away to college, and then kept running for 12 more years. I must have been staring because he turned, and our eyes met across 20 feet of crowded park. His expression shifted through surprise, recognition, and something else I couldn't quite read. Then he smiled, and it was like no time had passed at all. "David?" He walked over, and suddenly he was right there in front of me, real and solid and smelling like cedar and something citrusy. "I heard you might come back for this." Ethan. His name felt strange in my mouth after so long. Yeah, I couldn't miss the town's big moment. "How are you?" We hugged, and it lasted a second too long to be casual. When we pulled apart, there was this charged moment where neither of us knew quite what to say. He looked good. Better than good. There was a confidence in the way he carried himself that hadn't been there when we were 18, lines around his eyes that came from smiling, a presence that made the crowded park feel suddenly smaller. "I'm good. Really good, actually." He gestured to a bench near the duck pond. "You want to catch up? I feel like we have about 12 years to cover." We sat down, and the conversation flowed easier than I expected. He told me about his life, how he'd gone to Iowa State, studied architecture, moved to Des Moines for a while, but eventually came back to Millbrook 5 years ago. He'd started his own firm, mostly designing custom homes and renovating historic buildings. He was working on converting the old textile mill into loft apartments. "And you're back here permanently?" I asked, trying to imagine choosing to return to the place we'd both been so desperate to leave. "Turns out small-town life suits me better than I thought." He smiled, but there was something wistful in it. Plus, my dad got sick a few years back. Cancer. He's fine now, in remission, but it made me realize what mattered. Family, community, having a place where people know your name. I told him about Chicago, about my job in marketing, about the apartment with the view of the lake that had never quite felt like home. I told him about Rachel, and he listened with this focused attention that I'd forgotten he had, like whatever you were saying was the most important thing in the world. I heard you got married, he said quietly. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Yeah, well, I picked at the label on my lemonade cup. Turns out you can't build a life with someone when you're not being honest with yourself about who you are. The words hung in the air between us, heavier than I'd intended. Ethan was quiet for a moment, then he said, I was married too, to Amanda. We divorced 2 years ago. I didn't know that. It was amicable. She's a good person. We're still friends, actually. She lives in Cedar Rapids now with her new partner. They just had a baby. He paused, choosing his words carefully. But yeah, similar situation. I think we both knew we were trying to fit into shapes that weren't quite right for us. There was something in the way he said it, a weight of meaning behind the words, and I felt this pull in my chest. All the conversations we'd never had, all the things we'd left unsaid when I'd left for Northwestern, and he'd gone to Iowa State, and we'd let the distance do the work of ending whatever we'd been too scared to name. Remember senior year? I said, the words coming out before I could stop them. That night after graduation, we drove out to Miller's Pond and just talked until sunrise. I think about that night a lot, Ethan said softly. You told me you were scared of leaving, scared of not knowing who you were supposed to be. And you said that maybe that was the point. That college was where we got to figure it out. Did you? Figure it out? I looked at him, at the way the afternoon sun caught in his eyes, turning them almost golden, at the slight smile on his lips that was both hopeful and guarded, at this person who'd known me when I was just beginning to understand myself and who I'd run from because that understanding terrified me. I'm starting to, I said. We spent the rest of the afternoon together, wandering through the festival like we were kids again. We threw rings at bottles and failed miserably. We ate funnel cake and got powdered sugar all over ourselves. We watched the historical reenactment and made quiet jokes about the overly serious guy playing the town founder. It felt easy and right and like coming home in a way that had nothing to do with geography. As evening approached, they started setting up for the dance in the pavilion. A local country band was doing sound check, and people were stringing up lights that would turn the whole area into something magical once the sun set. Ethan checked his watch. I should probably go check on my dad, make sure he's not overdoing it. He's been volunteering at the Historical Society booth all day. Right, of course. I felt a flutter of disappointment. It was really good seeing you, Ethan. He hesitated, then reached out and touched my arm. Just a brief contact, but it sent electricity through me. Come to the dance tonight? It starts at 8. I'll be here. I'd really like to see you again. Yeah, I said, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. I'd like that, too. I went back to my parents' house and tried to act normal through dinner, but my mom kept giving me these knowing looks. Finally, as I was heading upstairs to change, she caught my arm. You saw Ethan today, didn't you? How did you know? She smiled. Because you have the same look on your face you used to get in high school whenever he'd call or come by, like the world just got a little brighter. I wanted to deny it, but what was the point? We're just catching up, Mom. Mm-hmm, she patted my cheek. He's a good man, David, and he's been single for 2 years now, just so you know. The dance was already in full swing when I arrived at 8:30. The pavilion was packed with people of all ages, from little kids running around to elderly couples swaying to the music. The band was playing a cover of some classic country song, and the lights strung overhead made everything glow warm and golden. I scanned the crowd, my heart beating faster, looking for that blue chambray shirt. I found him near the refreshment table, talking to a couple I vaguely recognized. When he saw me, his whole face lit up, and he excused himself, making his way through the crowd to meet me. You came, he said, and there was such genuine happiness in his voice that it made my chest tight. I said I would. Dance with me. The song was slow, something about small-town nights and young love, and I let him lead me onto the floor. His hand was warm on my back, and we fell into step easily, moving together like we'd done this 1,000 times before. Around us, other couples swayed and turned, but I was only aware of him, the way he smelled. The solid warmth of his shoulder under my hand, the way he was looking at me like I was something precious he'd thought he'd lost. "I need to tell you something," Ethan said quietly, his breath warm against my ear. "I've thought about you every day for 12 years, every single day, and I know that's probably too much, too intense, but I'm tired of not saying what I mean. I'm tired of pretending." My throat felt tight. "Ethan, that night at Miller's Pond, I wanted to kiss you. I wanted to tell you that I was in love with you, that I had been since sophomore year. But you were so focused on getting out, on starting fresh somewhere new, and I thought if I said anything, it would just make everything harder. So I let you go." We'd stopped dancing. We were just standing there in the middle of the floor, holding each other while other couples moved around us. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes. "I wanted you to kiss me," I whispered. "I was terrified that you would, because then I'd have to admit what I was feeling, what it meant. I wasn't ready, Ethan. I wasn't brave enough. And now?" I pulled back just enough to look at him, really look at him, at this beautiful, patient, incredible man who'd waited 12 years without even knowing he was waiting, who'd built a good life and come back home and become the person he was always meant to be. And I realized that I'd been running for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand still, to be present, to be honest. "Now I'm tired of running," I said. He kissed me then, soft and careful and sweet, and the world fell away. There was just us, just this moment, just the feeling of finally being brave enough to reach for what I wanted. When we broke apart, I was aware of people around us, of a few cheers and whistles, of my mother somewhere in the crowd, definitely crying happy tears. But mostly I was aware of Ethan's smile, bright enough to rival all the lights strung above us. "Stay," he said, "not just for the weekend. Stay and see what this could be. Work remote for a while. Give us a chance." It was crazy. It was impulsive. It was everything I'd spent 12 years trying not to be. But as I stood there in the middle of that small-town dance pavilion, holding the hand of the boy I'd loved when I was too scared to call it love, I realized that maybe crazy and impulsive was exactly what I needed. "Okay," I said, "let's see where this goes." We danced until the band packed up. We walked through the quiet streets of Millbrook, past the dark storefronts and under the street lamps, holding hands and talking about everything and nothing. He showed me the mill he was converting, let us in with his key so I could see the exposed brick and the original wooden beams and his vision for what it could become. We stood in what would eventually be someone's living room, looking out at the town square through tall windows, and he pulled me close. "I can't believe you're here," he murmured against my hair. "I can't believe this is real." "I'm here," I said. "I'm right here." And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I meant it completely. I wasn't thinking about Chicago or my apartment or the life I'd left behind. I wasn't planning my escape route or counting down the days until I could leave. I was just present in this moment with this person, feeling more like myself than I had in years. We have a lot to figure out still. Logistics and practicalities and all the complicated realities of trying to build something real. But as Ethan walks me back to my parents' house in the early hours of the morning, as we stand on the porch and kiss goodnight like teenagers, as I watch him walk away with the promise of breakfast tomorrow, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. Pure, uncomplicated hope. Sometimes you have to go back to move forward. Sometimes the thing you've been running from is exactly what you need to run toward. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person you loved when you were too young to know what love meant will still be there, waiting with open arms and a patient heart, ready to show you what it looks like to finally come home. Total odd char count, 16,847.